Sometimes the world becomes a little too much. There are days when you do not really want to speak to anyone. You do not want to explain how you are feeling. You do not want advice, motivation, or someone telling you that everything eventually will be fine. Sometimes you just want to close the door, turn off your phone, sit in front of a screen, and disappear for a while. And honestly, I do not think there is anything wrong with that. Because when we disappear into a video game, we are not always running away from our problems. Sometimes we are giving ourselves enough space to breathe. We are entering a world where things make sense. There is a destination on the map. There is a quest in front of us. There is a character waiting to speak to us. There is a boss that can be defeated, even if it takes 50 attempts. Real life does not always give us that clarity, but video games can. And I think Japanese video games, in particular, can understand this better than almost anything else. Games from developers like FromSoftware, Atlus, Sega, Capcom, Square Enix, and so many others do not just entertain us. Sometimes they teach us how to continue living. Gaming is often seen as an isolating hobby. You sit alone in a room, staring at a screen for hours, completely disconnected from the world around you. And yes, sometimes that is exactly what it looks like. But being alone and feeling lonely are not always the same thing. There are moments when isolation can be peaceful. You are not shutting the world out forever. You are just stepping away from it temporarily. And video games can give us somewhere to go during that time. You can walk through the streets of Inaba while the rain falls in Persona 4. You can sit beside a site of grace in Elden Ring. You can return to Café LeBlanc after a long day in Persona 5. You can explore at night, surrounded by lights, people, restaurants, arcades, and stories. These places are fictional, but the comfort they provide can be completely real. They become familiar. You remember where shops are, you recognise the music, you know which characters will be waiting for you. And suddenly, your room does not feel quite as empty. You may physically be alone, but you are spending time in a world filled with people, places, music, and memories. For a few hours, you have somewhere you belong. I think that this is one of the most beautiful things games can offer us. They give us solitude without complete loneliness. FromSoftware games are probably the clearest example of games teaching us perseverance. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring, and even Armored Core can make you feel completely powerless. You enter an arena and get destroyed. You fight a boss and barely remove a quarter of its health. You try again and somehow perform even worse. The game does not care how frustrated you are. It does not lower the difficulty because you had a bad day. But it also never tells you that winning is impossible. Every defeat teaches you something. You begin recognizing an attack. You learn when to dodge. You change your equipment. You discover a shortcut. You survive for a few seconds longer than before. Then eventually, you win. The boss that felt impossible is lying on the ground, and you are still standing. That experience may sound small. It is only a video game, after all. But when you are struggling with something outside of the game, those victories can mean much more. They remind you that feeling defeated is not always the same as being defeated. They teach you that progress is not always visible. Sometimes, progress is surviving one attack that killed you before. Sometimes it is reaching the second phase. Sometimes it is simply choosing to try again. These games do not promise that everything will be easy. They tell us that difficult things can still be overcome. Not through destiny, not because we are secretly special, but because we kept going. Many Japanese games take place in worlds that are already falling apart. Dark Souls begins in a dying kingdom. Elden Ring takes place in a land shattered by war, ambition, loss, and decay. NieR presents worlds filled with tragedy, repetition, and questions that may never receive comfortable answers. Persona often follows young people living through grief, isolation, abuse, uncertainty, and the fear that they do not truly belong anywhere. These worlds are rarely perfect, but they are still worth exploring. There are still people worth meeting. There are still beautiful places hidden amongst the ruins. There is still music. There is still laughter. There is still hope. And I think that can change the way we see our own lives. Sometimes we believe life has to be perfect before we're allowed to enjoy it. We think we need to solve every problem, become the person we want to be, achieve all of our goals, and finally feel completely happy. Only then can life begin. But games often show us something different. They show us characters finding purpose inside broken worlds. They create friendships during disasters. They stop to cook meals, go fishing, visit cafes, play arcade games, and enjoy small moments even when something terrible is waiting around the corner. The world does not need to be perfect for something beautiful to exist inside it. Maybe life works the same way. Atlus and Sega games often understand friendship in a way that feels incredibly sincere. Persona is not only about defeating shadows or changing society. It is about spending time with people. You listen to their problems, you eat together, you study together, you help them confront parts of themselves they are ashamed of. And slowly, those relationships become the reason you want to protect the world in the first place. The same is true in the Like a Dragon series. Ichiban does not survive because he is the strongest person in the world. He survives because he is willing to trust people. He builds a party from individuals who have been rejected, embarrassed, forgotten, or left behind. They are not perfect heroes, they are adults who have made mistakes and lost things, but together they become something stronger. That is what makes these stories so meaningful. They remind us that friendship is not only about sharing good moments, it is also about allowing someone to see when you are struggling. It is about listening. It is about forgiving. It is about accepting that nobody has everything figured out. Sometimes, fictional friendships can even help us understand what we want from our real relationships. They teach us to appreciate the people who stay. They show us the importance of reaching out. And during periods when we feel disconnected from everyone, they remind us what human connection can look like. There are times when simply having something to look forward to can make a huge difference. Maybe you want to see what happens in the next chapter. Maybe you're one trophy away from a platinum. Maybe you finally reached a boss that you have been preparing to fight. Maybe a new game from your favourite series is releasing soon. From the outside, these things can appear meaningless, but meaning is not decided by how something looks to other people. Meaning comes from what something gives to you. A video game can give structure to an empty day. It can give you a goal when you feel directionless. It can make you curious when everything else feels dull. It can introduce you to music, art, mythology, history, philosophy, and people you may have never discovered otherwise. Sometimes it can simply give you a reason to get out of bed, and that reason does not have to solve your entire life. It only has to help you reach the next day. I do not believe video games can solve every problem. They cannot replace real relationships, professional support, medical care, or the difficult work that sometimes needs to happen outside of the screen. And sometimes we do need to turn the console off and face something we have been avoiding, but that does not make the comfort that games provide meaningless. Rest is not the same as surrender. Escaping temporarily is not always cowardice. Sometimes we need to step away before we are strong enough to return. Games can give us that space. They can hold our attention while our minds recover. They can give us manageable challenges when life feels impossible. They can remind us what friendship, courage, hope, sacrifice, and beauty look like. Then, when we eventually put the controller down, we may return to the world slightly different. Not completely healed, not suddenly fearless, but calmer, more hopeful, and maybe a little more willing to try again. Video games may genuinely be one of the greatest things humanity has ever created. They combine music, art, writing, performance, technology, and interaction into something we do not simply watch. We participate in it. We struggle alongside the characters. We make decisions. We explore the world. We experience the victories ourselves. That is why these games stay with us. We remember where we were when we defeated a certain boss. We remember the music playing during an important scene. We remember the characters who felt like friends during a time when we desperately needed them. And we remember the worlds that gave us somewhere to go when our own world felt unbearable. Sometimes video games teach us about life. Sometimes they show us the value of friendship. Sometimes they teach us to never give up. And sometimes they do something much simpler. They sit with us when we do not want to be alone. They do not ask us to explain ourselves. They do not judge us. They simply place a controller in our hands, open a door into another world, and allow us to keep moving forward. One step, one quest, one boss, one day at a time.